Asia-Pacific region is the world's most natural disaster-prone area, accounting for more than half of the world's natural disasters that occurred in the last year. Whether it's the devastating earthquake that recently struck Nepal, killing 8,000 people, or Typhoon Yolanda that left a path of havoc through the Philippines in 2013, natural disasters serve as a wake-up call to risk-prone countries to prepare for what might strike next. One way of accomplishing such in-depth preparedness is through the Multinational Communications Interoperability Program and its capstone event, Pacific Endeavor.
MCIP is a multilateral program within US PACOM. Its job is to go out and engage with the multilateral partners within the Pacific AOR. Specifically, we engage them on communications, interoperability, problems, solutions and standards as it relates to humanitarian assistance and disaster response events within the Pacific.
I think that the best way to deal with interoperability, to describe it, is that it's about bringing down barriers to our ability to communicate with others in a disaster.
Pacific Endeavor is a U.S. Pacific Command J6 program designed to bring together nations in the region, industry partners, academia, as well as international humanitarian community. We bring them together for an annual event known as our capstone, where we conduct a multitude of modules in support of communication process development and interoperability assessments.
Due to recent natural disasters and because natural disasters can strike at any moment, the necessity for a good emergency management plan is paramount. The MCIP program helps facilitate this by bringing together over 20 partner nation militaries, United Nations entities, non-governmental organizations, academia, and industry to address humanitarian assistance and disaster relief responses.
One of the strengths of the MCIP program is getting this diverse range of nations together because the time to have a conversation about a humanitarian assistance disaster relief activity is before it occurs, not after. And that's really what I think MCIP gives Australia. A seat at the table, an opportunity to be heard, but importantly an opportunity to learn from the experiences of others.
With a certainty of not if, but when a typhoon or earthquake will hit the Manila region, the Philippine Army decided to host Pacific Endeavor 2015.
For us Filipinos, who are usually hit by typhoons 21 times in a year, we could only prepare for so much and for so long. At one point in time, we will be needing the help of the other people. Pacific Endeavor is one channel where the military sector is opening up in the spirit of collaboration with the civilian sector towards saving the human race. The whole activity, the whole Pacific Endeavor experience is exciting.
It's important to have Pacific Endeavor in the Philippines because the Philippines are vulnerable to tsunamis. They are also vulnerable to earthquake. And an earthquake of a large magnitude in the Philippines would be catastrophic. In fact, that's the scenario that's driving our tabletop exercise during Pacific Endeavor. So it really brings a realness, a reality to what we're doing, and it makes it all that much more relevant and important to the participants here.
It was important to hold Pacific Endeavor in the Philippines this year because they actually experienced many HADR events each year, so they're actually a very skilled partner in this area. So we were able to learn a lot from them. They shared a lot of lessons learned. We're able to bring in a lot of their military, government, and NGO organizations to share those lessons learned with us.
Having people share past experiences and lessons learned helped this year's Pacific Endeavor participants understand the importance of communications and interoperability.
In Japan, we have had many disasters, especially a great tsunami in 2011, and we suffered big damage. Then I was in operation and worked together with United States forces. I appreciate them and felt importance of interoperability. So Pacific Endeavor is very important to improve interoperability.
So a few years ago, Super Typhoon Yolanda struck the Philippines. widespread devastation as it ripped through the country. As a result, there was a major international response to the aid of the Philippines. I was fortunate to be able to go to the Philippines as part of a U.S. team and work with the AFP, the Armed Forces of the Philippines, and their JA6 or their communications personnel. What it allowed me to do is kind of look at some of the communication gaps that were occurring, some of the challenges that the Armed Forces of the Philippines communicators had, and then take that back as a lessons learned to how we could apply it in Pacific Endeavor under a information sharing or training environment.
To ensure participants understand the severity of natural disasters, the Pacific Endeavor Capstone event teaches the participants to practice how they would react in a real-world situation. A white cell was organized to create a scenario or tabletop exercise that would simulate an environment that would place participants in a humanitarian assistance and disaster relief situation.
White cell is also like the scenario cell. So basically, they take the requirements that the MCIP Secretariat says, hey, these are the things we want to help resolve or solve or find out for this particular tabletop exercise. And they work with NGOs, government agencies around, like the National Disaster Risk Reduction Management, and the actual military component, of course. And they say, okay, here's the things we need to know. Here's, based on the past year's exercise, some key lessons learned or things we need to work on or challenges that we need to resolve. So based on these questions, I want you to come forth and prompt our training audience, in this case it's the corporate board of the TTX, with these challenges so we can find out how to improve.
Participants took this year's event to heart, having learned that the 2014 earthquake tabletop exercise in Nepal became a reality when a devastating earthquake hit the country in early 2015.
We conducted Pacific Endeavor 14 in Kathmandu, Nepal. It was an earthquake scenario, very close to the actual earthquake which struck 7 months later. We were focusing primarily on the importance of establishment of a multinational coordination center, which is where all the responding nations will come to a central location and enabling a sharing of information to occur. We also tested a variety of systems in real-world scenarios, utilizing the topology and the mountain of the region of Nepal. How do we best utilize those RF systems, those telephony systems, those IP systems in mountainous regions? So the 2014 was as close to what we felt would be the response if a real disaster occurred. What we do understand from our Nepalese partners that the training that we conducted, the NMCC operations, the radio operations, the ability to forecast where to place those communication systems was very instrumental in their initial establishment of their response element, and it provided a great deal of assistance as far as their teams already having familiarity with those processes.
The MCIP has supported us to establish the command and control system during the real disaster, that is 7.8 mega, the scale earthquake that hit Nepal on the 25th April 2015. And the PE that organized in 2014 helped us to come up with the MNMCC from its establishment to sustain its operation. So it was really helpful, and the PE gave us a great insight to deal with that disaster.
This year's White Cell consisted of communication experts from many different areas to include the National Society for Earthquake Technology, Humanity Road, and the World Food Program. These experts utilized their real-world experiences to unexpectedly add new twists to the scenario.
The tabletop exercise gets people to think about the important questions, not necessarily solve all the problems right then, but at least outline, all the things that they might need to know to operate on a more efficient level. Like, here's a problem. How would your country respond to this particular event? What equipment would you have to bring? Who would you need to notify? What are the policies in place in your governments that might help or might hinder your expected response? And those are the key questions that become very important before an event happens.
While the scenario-based training is critical, it was also just as important to make sure these concepts were being understood through model-based training. During the 2-week event, participants broke out into various senior leader engagements, hands-on equipment assessment exercises, and 3 sub-workshops: Radio Endeavor, Cyber Endeavor, and SATCOM Endeavor. All of the Endeavor workshops are fully collaborative events that link military and industry participants to develop fundamentals during a HADR event.
Radio Endeavor brought participants together to familiarize themselves on radio best use practices and principles.
The Radio Endeavor covers topics relating to the use and management of the electromagnetic spectrum. It also includes the interference analysis and reporting, radio theory, the ground and skywave propagations, and the national coordination for the use of spectrum.
Well, one of the big things in any disaster, a lot of those national systems aren't capable anymore. So one of the biggest resources still out there are HF radios. And we found that out in Kathmandu, and a lot of those ham radio operators was passing information that they could see on the ground. And if we can tie that into an IP network, that gets it out to the whole world that much faster. So our response time can be that much quicker, and we can get the services that those people on the ground need.
Cyber Endeavor addresses approaches and best practices as it applies to information assurance computer network defense during an HADR event.
Cyber Endeavor focus on information assurance and cyber network defense, linking both the military, partners in civilian, and all participants. We collaborate to analyze, to monitor, and try to solving about the threats in computer security system.
SATCOM Endeavor focused on the fundamentals of SATCOM terminal operations and practical techniques. The Global VSAT Forum conducted modules that allowed participants to receive commercial SATCOM installation and operation certificates.
SATCOM Endeavor is an information sharing module that provides information, training, and allows exposure to new technologies related to satellite communications, primarily satellite data communications. There's an important need for collaboration between industry, academia, non-governmental organizations, and the military. We are all there with a single mission of helping and supporting the affected population. And each organization brings its own skills, capabilities, and resources. And being able to increase the number of trained VSAT installers who can potentially be deployed during a disaster helps the response.
Along with the workshops, technical operational assessments were conducted to develop the multinational capacity to deploy and manage data and transmission networks, use multiple channels of communication, and the implementation of multinational forces' standard operating procedures. The Joint Interoperability Test Command assessed network installation procedures, network reliability, network security, and video voice service capability to support the exercise architecture.
For JITC, what we do for the Pacific Endeavor and the MCIP overall, we assess those radios and the systems that the coalition partners bring to make sure that they are interoperable. Interoperable is that they can talk to each other. But interoperability is more than that. We verify the procedures that they use. That's that total interoperability, is those three things coming together: the people, the procedures, and the equipment.
A key component of Pacific Endeavor 2015 was the Corporate Board and Pacific Senior Communicators meeting. Each nation designated a representative to be their national delegation chief. Together, these members created the MCIP Corporate Board. They are responsible for the identification of the technical goals and overseeing the execution of the workshop.
The corporate board is very important to MCIP. These are the mid-grade officers who really do a lot of the heavy lifting. They're looking at where the program needs to go, the lessons learned, and kind of the overall strategic direction of the program.
The Pacific Senior Communicators Meeting is where flag and general officers from across the different nations received briefings on the objectives that were accomplished throughout the workshops.
Well, the purpose of the PSCM is twofold. One, to provide a venue where senior communicators can discuss and address Indo-Asia-Pacific operational C4 matters in a multinational forum. Two, they also serve as the MCIP Senior Steering Committee that provides guidance on the objectives and concept for the upcoming year's MCIP cycle and Pacific Endeavor capstone event.
Pacific Endeavor is, I would say, almost a unique forum for a senior communicator within the Pacific region. It's one of the few opportunities that I would get to be able to mix with such a diverse range, diverse set of nations, For example, I'm sitting next to the senior communicator from Mongolia, and on my left is the senior communicator from Papua New Guinea. That's just unique.
In addition to these informative modules, supporting organizations showcased a technology demonstration, which allowed participants to view applications and systems that could be used during an HADR response.
I think the advances that occur year to year, many times the military is not as up to speed on what the latest and greatest changes are. What the technology demos do is it offers us an ability to work again with our partners in industry and academia, as well as the international humanitarian community, provide a platform or forum so they can bring in these latest technologies as it relates to communications for consideration in the future procurement, also future use for disaster response.
As this event continues to grow, the amount of pre-planning involved has begun to increase. It was no small task for the logistics cell to handle the amount of communication gear each country needed to accomplish the mission.
The logistics team focuses on many aspects of the planning and execution of Pacific Endeavor each year. One of our main objectives is to develop standard operating procedures for equipment movement in and out of Asia-Pacific countries during disasters. That tends to be one of our most significant challenges due to different requirements in each country. For Pacific Endeavor 2015, we had 7 countries ship their equipment using the process that the logistics team developed during the planning cycle this year. The logistics team also managed the movement of over 330 delegates, which included the international humanitarian community, industry partners, and the academic representatives.
It is important to continue to solve the complex issues that natural disasters create. Each year is an opportunity to ready the skills and communication tools that will ensure a successful HADR event. Typically, in a natural disaster, the military is not the first to respond. Members from non-governmental organizations and the international humanitarian community are the first to arrive on scene. Building relationships with these first responders is critical to establish rapid communication.
Humanity Road is a digital response organization. We have digital volunteers around the world who come online in social media to monitor and help support the impacted public with amplifying information from officials and helping them to connect with solutions. So our goal is to help close the communications gap that's caused by disaster. That's why coming here is important to us, because process improvement on improving that communications gap is important for our mission goals.
As PE came to a close, everyone left feeling a sense of accomplishment and confidence should they have to meet again under less than desirable circumstances.
My country is preparing for what we call the big one, a 7.2 magnitude earthquake. And the assumption is that during that time, the services provided by the commercial telecompanies may be rendered unserviceable, meaning there will be no internet and we cannot use our cellular phones. And with that, there will be a difficulty in making communications between the local responders and the survivors at the most devastated areas. In the MCIP 15, I'm happy to know that when something really bad happened in my country, my friends that I have met in the Pacific Endeavor will help us to establish the communication system. And this will link for help from the 4 corners of the earth that will aid us in the fast recovery of our country.
The biggest takeaway, I believe, is for the host nation. And this venue here brings together not just the military, but their government, their disaster risk reduction and management centers, their emergency operating personnel, the regional office, Red Cross, Red Crescent, the UN World Food Program, and even more. But all these organizations that come together and have that opportunity to talk and that dialogue. That is one huge takeaway for the host nation.
I think Pacific Endeavor 15 was an amazing success. We had great participation of all the nation countries, just an amazing opportunity to meet with all the NGOs. The technology demonstrations were really neat because they reinforced the work that we were learning about with HADR. And then plus, really one of the most important things was the lessons learned, especially from Nepal and from the Philippines. Just amazing lessons learned that definitely we all benefited from.
Pacific Endeavour 16 will be hosted in Australia due to their history of natural disasters. They don't know when the next natural disaster will hit, but by investing time and building relationships on the front end, they will be prepared thanks to their training.
I think Pacific Endeavour in Australia is a great opportunity for a number of reasons. One, we're finally able to bring people to Australia, but also it's an invaluable opportunity for us to put on the table a real-life scenario, which is for next year a Category 5 cyclone or hurricane making landfall in the vicinity of Brisbane, and to workshop it and understand how we can perhaps improve and enhance upon our government and our military response to that situation.
I think Australia's event next year is going to be really exciting because they're hosting it at their simulation center. So we're hoping we get maybe some more realistic simulation of the HADR event, and I think that should really add to the scenario.